This is a network architecture model showing a legacy static firewall. Notice how it acts as a single checkpoint, waiting for a linear attack. Legacy endpoint detection relies on this reactive model, assuming threats move at a predictable pace. But modern AI adversaries operate with stochastic intent, continuously shifting their trajectory the moment they encounter a static rule. These autonomous entities dynamically swap out their toolchains and accumulate malicious intent at speeds that physically exceed human physiological limits. A static wall cannot stop a dynamic, self-evolving threat. Human-paced heuristic defenses fail because they rely on catching a known fingerprint, while the adversary is constantly rewriting its own DNA. To survive machine-speed adversaries, defense must evolve from passive monitoring into an active, thinking cybernetic organism. This is the Seraph AI architecture. Seraph operates on a principle called manifest integrity. In this model, the right for a process to execute is no longer a software permission granted by an administrator. It is a mechanical state anchored directly in the physical hardware's truth. If the underlying machine state does not perfectly match the system's strict operational rules, the environment mathematically refuses to manifest the agent's intent. To understand how a system mathematically refuses to execute a command, we must examine its four biological components. First, the memory, next, the brain, the nervous system, and the individual cells. Establishing manifest integrity eliminates shadow execution. Malicious logic is denied the foundational ground to exist in the first place. An organism cannot make accurate decisions in the present without an unalterable memory of the past. This diagram illustrates the world state security model. You are looking at a distributed mesh of network nodes connected to a central timeline. This timeline acts as an append-only event log, recording every intent, decision, and outcome across the network into permanent, unalterable blocks. To keep this memory perfectly unified across a fragmented network, the system uses conflict-free replicated data types, or CRDTs. CRDTs are a mathematical protocol that allows distributed computers to independently update their localized data while guaranteeing they will all eventually reach the exact same deterministic consensus. Legacy security tools often trigger thousands of disconnected alerts, forcing human operators to guess how they relate. The world state security model instead connects these isolated red warnings across the vector map, reconstructing the entire causal attack chain in real time. By maintaining a persistent, unified memory, the system gains the context required to identify and neutralize the root disease, rather than reacting only to isolated symptoms. Once the system understands its past, it needs a brain to arbitrate the present. Relying on a single AI model for defense creates a massive vulnerability because single-agent logic can be easily tricked or hijacked by adversarial prompt injections. This is why Seraph uses a cognition fabric built on a triune council. As you can see in this three-column decision matrix, every execution request is independently evaluated by three completely differentiated ontological roles: Metatron, Michael, and Loki. Michael represents the action doctrine. This role evaluates the system's current state, drafts the ranked candidate actions, and calculates the potential blast radius of executing those commands. Loki provides adversarial dissent. This agent is structurally mandated to assume every request is hostile. It actively hunts for hidden privilege leaps and injects simulated deception into Michael's proposed commands to expose potential flaws. Metatron acts as the sovereign belief. It serves as the final arbitrator, synthesizing the operational plans from Michael and the adversarial challenges from Loki into a singular approved policy decision. If the intent involves a high-sensitivity action, like quarantining a machine, this triune council alone is not enough. The action must also achieve a cryptographic 67% supermajority quorum among all verified nodes in the network. This multi-agent arbitration guarantees that an attacker cannot use clever wordplay to turn the system's defensive authority against itself. Decisions made by the brain travel through the system's virtual nervous system, known as the governance sensor gateway. Its primary function is to constantly measure the rhythmic pulse of all system actions. Evaluating only the content of a request creates a vulnerability known as semantic blindness. Advanced threats can generate perfectly benign text commands to disguise what is actually a high-speed, hostile tempo attack. Look at this data stream. To counter tempo attacks, the system uses temporal calculus. Notice how the incoming text requests are violently stripped of their words. All that remains are rhythmic waveform markers, which measure the exact millisecond gaps between executions, entirely ignoring the semantic payload. Normal human interaction creates a high entropy waveform, meaning the spacing between commands is natural and irregular. Automated machine-speed scripts produce low-entropy bursts, characterized by perfect, rapid spacing that physical humans cannot replicate. The system's harmonic engine calculates specific metrics like interval jitter and baseline drift. If a process drifts away from its established symphonic recovery cadence and crosses the red safety threshold, the system registers a dissonant fracture. The moment that resonance drops, the network activates a global throttle. This mechanical response forces severe execution delays and imposes heightened scrutiny, completely severing the automated attack's momentum. An adversary might successfully forge the text of what a command says, but they cannot forge the physical, sub-second cadence of how it is spoken. Endpoints are no longer passive monitors. They act as governed fortresses, actively defending their inner sanctum using their own localized constitutional boundaries. These endpoints do not blindly execute central commands. Before taking any action, the local cell evaluates the instruction against its own cryptographic permits. This enforcement happens at the lowest possible level. This operating system stack diagram highlights the exact boundary the tool user space requests and the OS kernel, monitored by an eBPF implementation. eBPF is a technology that allows custom security programs to run safely within the operating system kernel itself. It acts as a machine law compiler, intercepting commands at the exact moment of process birth. To manifest a new process, the kernel requires two strict inputs. First, physical hardware proof of boot integrity from the machine's Trusted Platform Module, or TPM chip. Second, a capability token secured by Kyber 768, a post-quantum cryptographic algorithm, issued by the Triune cluster. If an unauthorized AI attempts to bypass the system and lacks that exact cryptographic token, the kernel mathematically revokes its right to exist prior to the binary ever executing. Gating execution directly at the kernel substrate ensures absolute local sovereignty, entirely eliminating the possibility of shadow execution on the node. Pulling back to view the total architecture, we can see the exact scale of the challenge an adversary faces. This macro view shows three distinct interlocking rings: the harmonic layer evaluating timing, the triune layer evaluating semantics, and the mesh layer evaluating quorum. To breach the organism, an attacker cannot beat these systems sequentially. They're forced into simultaneous synchronization, creating a compounding mathematical improbability of success. First, the attacker must perfectly spoof the localized temporal rhythm to avoid a dissonant fracture within the harmonic ring. Simultaneously, the semantic payload must survive multi-agent adversarial simulation within the triune ring. Finally, the attacker must perfectly forge a 67% cryptographic quorum across the distributed mesh. An adversary must defeat all three layers in the exact same millisecond. If they fail on any single front, the hardware immediately vetoes the manifestation. Like combining rhythmic timing, semantic arbitration, and distributed hardware consensus, the architecture creates an impenetrable membrane that renders machine-speed intent mathematically impotent. The primary architectural achievement of the Serif organism is the absolute separation between the evaluation of a thought and the execution of a terminal command. By closing the loop between physical hardware truth and continuous cognitive arbitration, the system ensures that autonomous intelligence never operates without verified, mathematically proven authority. Engineering the environment at the substrate level ensures that unlawful logic lacks the physical capacity to exist. The Metaton triune outbound gate establishes a new standard of digital sovereignty. Under this architecture, the machine no longer merely checks a list of rules. Instead, it physically lives by a constitution.